When I refused to sell my house to fund my sister's brunch trip, Mom smashed it into my mouth until my teeth bled, so I made sure they'd never touch my life again. The taste of blood on my tongue was metallic and warm. I felt the sharp edge of the porcelain plate slice into my lower lip as my mother drove it forward with both hands. Her face twisted and raged just inches from mine. The decorative edge caught my gum, and I felt my incisors shift slightly in its socket. When she finally pulled back, breathing hard, I touched my mouth, and my fingers came away red. "You selfish, ungrateful bitch," she hissed, still clutching the shattered pieces of what used to be her fine china. My sister Tiffany stood behind her, arms crossed, looking smug despite the horror of what had just transpired in my own kitchen. She'd brought our mother here as backup, both of them convinced they could bully me into signing over my house. My house, the one I'd saved for 8 years to buy, working double shifts at the hospital while living in a studio apartment that barely had room for a bed. All this because Tiffany wanted to start a wellness brunch business in Portland and needed startup capital. Apparently, my 3-bedroom ranch-style home in suburban Ohio was the perfect sacrifice for her entrepreneurial dreams. "Get out," I said quietly, spitting blood into my kitchen sink. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Both of you. Now." My mother laughed, actually laughed. "We're not going anywhere until you see reason. Your sister needs this opportunity. Family helps family." I grabbed a dish towel and pressed it to my mouth, tasting copper and feeling the throb where my tooth had been loosened. Something cold settled in my chest, replacing the shock. For 32 years, I'd bent to their will. I'd given Tiffany my college fund when she decided to backpack through Europe at 19. I co-signed her first apartment lease, which she defaulted on, tanking my credit for years. I'd paid for her wedding to Brandon, a wedding that lasted exactly 14 months before she decided married life wasn't authentic to her journey. And here she stood in my kitchen, watching our mother assault me, waiting for me to cave one more time. "You have 30 seconds before I call the police," I told them, my phone already in my hand. Tiffany rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic, Gwen. Mom barely touched you." I pulled the towel away from my mouth, letting them see the blood freely flowing down my chin. My mother's face paled slightly, but she didn't apologize. She never apologized. They left when I started dialing 911, my mother muttering about disrespect and disappointment. Tiffany paused at the door, her expression calculating rather than concerned. "You'll regret this," she said simply. "We always take care of our own, and you're making it clear you're not part of this family anymore." "Good," I replied and shut the door in her face. The emergency dentist visit cost me $800. My incisor needed to be stabilized with a splint bonded to the adjacent teeth, and I had 3 stitches in my lower lip. The splint would stay in place for at least 3 weeks while the tooth reattached to the bone. The doctor asked twice if I wanted to file a police report. I said no both times, still clinging to some outdated notion that family issues should stay private. That was my first mistake in what would become an 18-month war. The days following the assault were strange. I went to work, smiled at patients, administered medications, and pretended everything was fine. But every time I caught my reflection in a window or mirror, I saw the swelling on my lip and the yellowing bruise spreading across my chin. Colleagues asked what happened. I told them I'd slipped in my kitchen, hit the counter edge. The lie came easily, practiced from years of covering for family dysfunction. My coworker Melissa pulled me aside during a shift change. She was older, maybe mid-50s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that made her excellent in crisis situations. "That bruise didn't come from a counter," she said bluntly, keeping her voice low. "I've seen enough domestic violence cases to recognize the pattern. If you need help or somewhere safe to stay, just say the word." I almost told her everything. The words were right there, pressing against my damaged lip. But shame stopped me. How do you explain that your own mother did this? that your sister watched it happen and felt no remorse. People understand abusive partners or violent strangers. They struggle with mothers who assault daughters over real estate. "I'm okay," I said instead. "Really, just clumsy." Melissa didn't believe me, but she respected my boundary. She squeezed my shoulder and went back to work. I felt the weight of that missed opportunity for weeks afterward. Later, when everything exploded and I needed people who had witnessed the aftermath, Melissa would become one of my most credible witnesses, providing a detailed statement about my injuries and demeanor in the days following the assault. The physical pain faded within a couple weeks, but something else lingered. I started having nightmares about my mother's face, twisted in rage, about the sound of porcelain shattering against my teeth. I'd wake up gasping, touching my mouth to make sure it was healed, that I was safe in my own bedroom. During those sleepless nights, I'd walk through my house, turning on lights, reminding myself that this space was mine. I bought it with money I'd earned through countless overnight shifts, through holidays spent working while others celebrated. The mortgage was in my name alone. Every piece of furniture, every carefully chosen paint color, every improvement represented my choices and my hard work. This 3-bedroom ranch had been my dream since I was a teenager, sharing a cramped room with Tiffany, listening to her complain about everything from the color of the walls to the way I breathed too loudly while studying. I promised myself that one day I'd have my own space where nobody could tell me what to do or who to be. And now they wanted me to give it up so Tiffany could serve overpriced avocado toast to Portland hipsters. 2 weeks later, my father called. Dad had always been the neutral party, the peacemaker who stayed quiet while Mom orchestrated the family dynamics. He'd never stood up for me, but he'd never actively participated in the cruelty either. "Your mother's in the hospital," he said, without preamble. "She had a breakdown, anxiety attack. The doctors say stress triggered it." I waited, knowing what was coming. "Tiffany told us you threatened them both," he continued, "that you became violent and they had to leave for their own safety." His voice was tired, defeated. "Why would you do that, Gwen? Your mother's been crying for days." The audacity stole my breath. "Did Tiffany mention that Mom smashed a plate into my face? That I had to get stitches?" Silence on the other end. Stretching so long, I checked to see if the call had dropped. "She said you were being dramatic about accidentally bumping into the counter," Dad finally said, but his voice had changed, uncertain now. "I have medical records, photos, a police report I can still file," I said. I hadn't filed one, but the lie came easily. "Is that what you want? Your wife arrested for assault?" More silence. "Gwen, let's not make this bigger than it needs to be. Family stays family. We work through things. Tell Mom I hope she feels better," I said, and ended the call. The conversation left me shaking. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my back porch, staring at the yard I'd spent 2 summers landscaping. I planted those rose bushes myself, learned about soil pH and fertilizer schedules, spent weekends nurturing them until they bloomed. The garden was proof that I could create something beautiful when left alone. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message made my blood run cold. "You'll regret turning your back on family. We know where you work. We know your schedule. Sleep tight." I blocked the number, but 3 more messages came from different numbers within the hour, each one slightly more threatening than the last. They knew what time I left for work. They knew which grocery store I frequented. They knew my license plate number. The surveillance felt suffocating. I started checking over my shoulder constantly, jumping at unexpected sounds. My home, my sanctuary, began to feel like a trap. I installed a security system that week, cameras covering every entrance. The installation cost nearly $2,000 I hadn't budgeted for, but the alternative was living in constant fear. The footage proved useful faster than I'd anticipated. 3 days after installation, the camera caught Tiffany creeping around my backyard at 2 a.m, testing windows and doors. She didn't know about the cameras yet. I watched the recording in disbelief as my sister, the person who'd shared a room with me for 16 years, tried to break into my home. I saved the footage to multiple locations and sent a copy to a lawyer I'd been researching, just in case things escalated further. I didn't report it to the police immediately, a decision I questioned for weeks afterward. Part of me still believed this could be resolved without law enforcement involvement. Part of me feared that involving the police would push my family into doing something even worse. And honestly, part of me wanted to gather more evidence, to have an overwhelming case when I finally did take action. That footage became Exhibit C in the eventual restraining order hearings. That hope died completely when my boss called me into her office. My boss, Rachel, called me into her office 3 days later. Her expression was uncomfortable as she slid a printed email across her desk toward me. I recognized my sister's name in the sender field before I even read the contents. The message detailed my ongoing substance abuse problem and erratic behavior. It claimed I'd been stealing medication from the hospital pharmacy and that my family was deeply concerned for my well-being and the safety of our patients. Tiffany had sent it to the hospital administrator, the board of directors, and the state nursing board. Every word was a lie, but lies take time to disprove. Rachel assured me she didn't believe any of it, but protocol required an investigation. I was placed on administrative leave pending a drug test and inventory audit. "I'm sorry," Rachel said, and she genuinely seemed to be. "Your work has always been exemplary. We'll clear this up quickly." The humiliation was immediate and thorough. Security escorted me from the building while colleagues watched. I had to surrender my badge and keycard at the front desk, like a criminal. The walk to my car felt like a perp walk, every pair of eyes judging me, wondering if the rumors were true. Brian from IT caught up with me in the parking lot before I could drive away. He glanced around nervously, making sure nobody was watching, then handed me a business card for a lawyer. "My sister went through something similar with her ex-husband," he said quietly. "False accusations, harassment, the whole thing. This attorney helped her fight back. Just don't let them get away with this, okay? You're one of the best nurses we have." His kindness nearly broke me. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, crying so hard I couldn't see to drive home safely. This job was my identity, my purpose, the thing I built my entire adult life around. And Tiffany had tried to destroy it with a few paragraphs of fiction. The drug test came back clean, obviously. The inventory audit showed no discrepancies, but the damage was done. My colleagues looked at me differently now. Whispers followed me down hallways. The investigation took 6 weeks. 6 weeks without pay while I burned through my savings to cover my mortgage and bills. During those 6 weeks, I learned what isolation really meant. Friends from work stopped responding to my texts, probably worried about being associated with someone under investigation. My social media accounts were flooded with messages from relatives I barely knew, all of them parroting my mother's version of events. According to the family narrative, I was an unstable addict who'd violently attacked my mother and sister during an intervention. The gaslighting was masterful. They'd rewritten history so thoroughly that even I started questioning my own memories. Had I overreacted? Was the plate incident somehow my fault? Maybe I'd moved wrong, caused the collision myself. Then I'd look at the photos on my phone, the ones I'd taken immediately after the assault. My bloodied mouth, the split lip, the loose tooth. The images were proof that my memory was accurate, that I wasn't crazy, that they were the aggressors. I printed copies of those photos and kept them everywhere, in my wallet, on my refrigerator, beside my bed. Whenever doubt crept in, I forced myself to look at them and remember the truth. My Aunt Paula, my mother's sister, called me during the 3rd week of my forced leave. I almost didn't answer, assuming she was calling to berate me like everyone else. But Paula had always been different from the rest of the family. Quieter, more observant. "I know what really happened," she said without preamble. "Your mother called me that night, bragging about putting you in your place. She thought I'd be proud of her for handling you." The relief of being believed nearly brought me to tears again. "Why didn't you say something? Would anyone have listened?" Paula sighed heavily. "Your mother has spent 40 years building her reputation as the perfect family matriarch. People believe what they want to believe, but I've seen how she treats you, how she's always treated you. You were never her daughter, Gwen. You were her backup plan. We talked for over an hour. Paula told me stories I'd never heard, incidents from my childhood that I'd forgotten or misremembered. She painted a picture of systematic favoritism and emotional manipulation that had started before I was old enough to recognize it. My mother, your grandmother, did the same thing to us, Paula explained. Played favorites, pitted us against each other. I got out by moving 3 states away and limiting contact. Your mother stayed close and became exactly like her. The cycle continues unless someone breaks it. I'm breaking it, I said with certainty. Good, Paula replied. And when you need someone to testify about their pattern of behavior, you call me. I'll tell the truth. Consequences be damned. Having one person in my corner, one family member who saw the situation clearly, gave me strength I didn't know I needed. Paula became my lifeline during those dark weeks, checking in regularly, reminding me that standing up for myself wasn't selfish or wrong. The day I was officially cleared and allowed to return to work should have felt like a victory. Instead, it felt hollow. My reputation had been tarnished, my savings depleted, and the trust I'd built with colleagues over years had been fractured in 6 weeks. Rachel called me into her office before my first shift back. I want you to know that we've documented everything thoroughly, she said. The false report, the lack of evidence, all of it. If your sister tries anything like this again, we'll pursue charges for filing a false complaint. Thank you, I managed, though thank you seemed inadequate for someone who'd believed in my innocence when few others had. Off the record, Rachel said, leaning back in her chair, her expression hardening. I have 3 sisters. We've had our issues over the years, normal sibling stuff. But what your family is doing to you, that's not normal. That's abuse. And you don't owe them forgiveness or reconciliation or another chance. You owe yourself safety and peace. Her words settled into my chest, permission I hadn't realized I needed. For so long, I'd been told that family was everything, that you forgave and forgot no matter what, that blood bonds trumped personal well-being. But here was someone I respected, someone with her own family relationships, telling me it was okay to walk away. I should have destroyed them then, but I was still thinking like someone who believed in redemption, in the possibility that we could all move past this and find some kind of peace. Tiffany had no such illusions. My car was keyed so deeply the scratches reached bare metal. Someone filed a false CPS report claiming I was running an unlicensed daycare and abusing children, which resulted in a humiliating home visit from social services. They found nothing because there was nothing to find, but my neighbors saw the social worker's car in my driveway and drew their own conclusions. Then my credit cards were maxed out. Someone had stolen my identity, opening new accounts in my name and going on shopping sprees. The fraud investigation revealed the applications had been filed from my parents' address, using information only family would have. I called my father one last time. Tell Tiffany this needs to stop. Now. I don't know what you're talking about, he said, but he couldn't hide the guilt in his voice. Maybe if you just helped your sister when she needed you, none of this would be happening. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes, but it contained 32 years of accumulated disappointment. My father had never been cruel like my mother, or manipulative like Tiffany, but his passivity had enabled them both. Every time he'd stayed silent while Mom belittled me, every time he'd looked away while Tiffany took things that belonged to me, every time he'd chosen peace over standing up for what was right, he'd been complicit. Do you even remember my college graduation? I asked suddenly, a memory surfacing that I'd buried for years. Tiffany threw a tantrum that morning because her boyfriend had broken up with her. Mom spent the entire ceremony comforting her in the parking lot. You sat through it, but you left during the reception to check on them. I stood there in my cap and gown alone, watching other families celebrate together. Silence on his end. That was a difficult day for your sister, he finally said. It was my day, Dad. Mine. But it's always been about her, hasn't it? I continued. Her needs, her feelings, her dreams. I'm just the supporting character in Tiffany's story. Well, not anymore. You're being unreasonable, he said, frustration creeping into his voice. Family means sacrifice. It means putting others first sometimes. No, I said clearly. It means mutual respect and love. What you're describing is martyrdom. I'm done being the family martyr. Brian worked after hours, not asking for payment or explanations beyond what I volunteered. He pulled data from cloud backups I didn't even know existed, recovering messages I deleted in moments of weakness, when I'd still believed my family might change. This is extensive, Brian said quietly, scrolling through months of harassment. Most people don't document this thoroughly. I'm a nurse, I replied. Documentation is what we do. Chart everything or face the consequences. He printed multiple copies of everything, organized chronologically in thick binders that looked disturbingly like legal evidence, because that's exactly what they were. The security footage from my house added another dimension to the case. Tiffany's attempted break-in was just the beginning. The cameras caught my mother driving past my house at odd hours, sometimes parking across the street for 20 or 30 minutes, just watching. My father appeared once, leaving an envelope under my doormat that contained photocopied pictures from my childhood with my face scribbled out in black marker. The psychological warfare was creative, I'll give them that. But creativity doesn't hold up in court. Harassment is harassment, regardless of how artistic the approach. I also discovered they'd been spreading rumors throughout my neighborhood. Mrs. Chen next door mentioned hearing I was involved in criminal activity. The Pattersons, 2 houses down, had been told I was running some kind of scam operation from my garage. Mr. Rodriguez across the street asked if the police visits were about the drug dealing my parents had warned him about. Each conversation revealed another layer of their campaign to isolate and destroy me. They weren't just attacking my career and finances. They were targeting my home, my safe space, trying to turn my own neighbors against me. I started documenting those conversations too, asking neighbors if they'd be willing to provide written statements about what my family had told them. Most agreed, disturbed by the lies they'd been fed. Some even apologized for believing the rumors without verifying them. I should have asked you directly, Mrs. Chen said, looking embarrassed. Your mother seems so worried, so convincing. But none of it made sense with the person we've known for 3 years. The neighborhood support was unexpected, but deeply appreciated. These people had no obligation to help me, but they did it anyway, providing timestamps and details that corroborated my version of events. Then I went to see Lawrence Mitchell, an attorney whose office was conveniently located 3 blocks from the hospital. His initial consultation fee was steep, but his reputation for handling family disputes was legendary. Lawrence's office was decorated with diplomas and certificates that spoke to his experience. He'd been practicing family law for 27 years, specializing in cases involving domestic abuse, harassment, and familial fraud. His receptionist offered me coffee and treated me with a kindness that suggested she'd seen many clients in my position. Lawrence listened to everything without interrupting, his expression growing progressively darker. When I finished, he leaned back in his leather chair and steepled his fingers. Your family has committed multiple felonies, he said bluntly. Identity theft, filing false reports, harassment, assault. We could pursue criminal charges if you wanted to go that route. I want them to leave me alone, I told him, permanently. Then we'll make it impossible for them to do anything else, he said. He opened his laptop and started typing. First, restraining orders against all 3 of them. The evidence you have is more than sufficient. Second, we pursue civil damages for the identity theft, the assault, and the defamation. Third, you file formal complaints about the false CPS and nursing board reports. Those are serious offenses with real consequences. Lawrence walked me through the process in detail, explaining what each step would entail and what outcomes I could realistically expect. He didn't sugarcoat anything or make promises he couldn't keep. His honesty was refreshing after months of dealing with my family's manipulation. This will get ugly, he warned. They'll paint you as the villain, claim you're tearing the family apart, probably contact other relatives to pressure you into dropping everything. Can you handle that? I thought about the blood on my kitchen floor, the weeks without income, the violated sense of safety in my own home. I thought about Tiffany's smug face and my mother's complete lack of remorse. I thought about my father's enabling silence and the decades of being treated as less than. I can handle it, I said. What I can't handle is letting this continue. How much will this cost me? Lawrence named a figure that made me wince. Most of my savings had already been depleted by the forced leave from work and dealing with the identity theft cleanup. But I had one asset they couldn't touch, one thing I protected above all else, my house. The house they'd wanted me to sell in the first place. I can take out a home equity loan, I said, whatever it takes. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. They'd wanted me to sell my house to fund Tiffany's pipe dream. Instead, I'd be leveraging it to fund their destruction. The equity loan gave me $40,000 to work with, enough for Lawrence's retainer and the lengthy legal battle ahead. I'd pay it back over 15 years, but at least I'd still own my home when this was over. Lawrence allowed himself a small smile. Let's get started. The restraining orders came through first. My parents were served at home. Tiffany was served at the organic grocery store where she worked part-time between finding herself. According to Lawrence's process server, she'd caused quite a scene, screaming about persecution and family betrayal while other shoppers filmed on their phones. My mother called from my father's phone, crying. I let it go to voicemail, but saved the recording for Lawrence. She violated the restraining order within 48 hours by showing up at my workplace. Hospital security escorted her out while she shouted about ungrateful children and broken families. I filed a police report immediately. The criminal complaint for violating the restraining order meant a court date, which took 3 months to arrive. The wheels of justice turned slowly, giving my family plenty of time to realize the severity of their situation. During those months, Lawrence filed the civil suit and began building our case for damages. My mother showed up in her Sunday best, playing the role of wounded matriarch. She told the judge I was mentally unstable, that she'd only been trying to help her troubled daughter. Lawrence presented my medical records, the photos of my bloody mouth, and the recording of her threatening voicemail. The judge's expression shifted from skepticism to disgust. Ma'am, you assaulted your daughter and then attempted to destroy her professionally when she wouldn't give you money, the judge said coldly. The restraining order stands. Any further violations will result in immediate arrest. Mom left the courtroom in tears, but I felt nothing watching her go. The civil suit took longer, stretching across 8 more months of depositions, document requests, and legal maneuvering. Lawrence filed for damages covering my medical bills, lost wages, legal fees, therapy costs, and emotional distress. The identity theft alone carried substantial penalties, and we could prove my parents had been complicit based on the applications originating from their address. Tiffany tried to represent herself, standing in court with printouts from legal advice websites, arguing that families should forgive and that I was being vindictive. The judge was not impressed by her preparation or her argument. You filed false reports with state agencies, damaged your sister's professional reputation, and participated in identity fraud, the judge stated flatly. These are not minor family squabbles. These are crimes. My parents hired their own attorney, a tired-looking man who clearly knew he was fighting a losing battle. He tried to argue that the identity theft was Tiffany's doing alone, that my parents were victims too. Lawrence produced bank statements showing my father had paid off one of the fraudulent credit cards, proof they'd known about the theft and benefited from it. The judgment came down in my favor, $87,000 in damages, split between my parents and Tiffany. My parents owned their home outright, but with a judgment lien placed on their property, they couldn't sell or refinance without satisfying the debt first. They managed to secure a cash-out refinance through a lender willing to work with a lien, using the payout to pay their portion of the judgment while saddling themselves with a new 30-year mortgage in their late 60s. Tiffany had no assets, but her wages would be garnished for the foreseeable future, $73 from every paycheck for the next 15 years or more. But the money was never the point. What mattered was the public record, the permanent documentation that they were the aggressors and I was the victim defending herself. The identity theft charges resulted in probation for all three of them. Lawrence had warned me that first-time offenders rarely see jail time, especially when they take plea deals. My mother received 2 years probation, my father 18 months, and Tiffany 2 years plus community service. It wasn't the justice I'd fantasized about, but the criminal records would follow them forever, impacting employment, housing applications, and their precious reputations. Tiffany lost her job when her employer learned about her criminal record. My parents became pariahs in their church community once word spread about what they'd done. Small towns have long memories, and assault combined with fraud was juicy gossip that wouldn't fade quickly. I moved 6 months after the court cases concluded. The house that had started this whole nightmare sold for $15,000 over asking price in a competitive market. After paying off the home equity loan I'd taken for legal fees, I still cleared $60,000 in profit. I used that money to relocate to Arizona, taking a position at a hospital system that offered better pay and benefits than I'd had in Ohio. For the first time in 18 months, my bank account was healthy. My credit was clean, and nobody was trying to destroy my life. My first day at the new job, I was assigned a mentor, a new nurse fresh out of school. Her enthusiasm reminded me of myself a decade earlier, full of idealism and hope. During our lunch break, she asked if I had family nearby. "No," I said simply. "It's just me out here." "That must be lonely," she said sympathetically. I thought about the years of manipulation and exploitation, about the blood on my kitchen floor and the weeks of investigations and false accusations. I thought about the legal bills and the stress and the nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if fighting back made me as bad as them. Then I thought about my new apartment with its mountain views, my clean credit report, my unburdened savings account, and the complete absence of people who saw me as an ATM with a pulse. "Not really," I told her honestly. "Not anymore." My phone occasionally lights up with numbers I don't recognize. I never answer, but I save the voicemails for my attorney just in case. Most are from my mother, her voice alternating between pleading and angry, begging me to drop the lien on their house or cursing me for destroying the family. A few are from Tiffany, who apparently believes if she apologizes enough times, I'll magically forgive everything and write her a check. My father called once from a gas station payphone, of all things, leaving a rambling message about how much this has cost them financially and socially. He wanted me to know they'd had to drop out of their social clubs because the judgment made them look bad. He seemed genuinely confused about why I wouldn't make this all go away. "Weren't you our daughter?" he'd said, his voice breaking. "Doesn't that mean anything to you?" It did mean something once. It meant sacrificing my own needs and dreams to prop up their golden child. It meant accepting abuse as love and exploitation as family obligation. But that version of me died in my kitchen, with blood in her mouth, and finally understood she'd never been their daughter, just their resource. Lawrence updates me quarterly on the garnishment payments. Tiffany pays $73 per paycheck when she manages to keep a job long enough to get one. My parents refinanced their house to pay their portion, taking on a mortgage in their late 60s. Every payment they make is a reminder that actions have consequences, even within families. Especially within families. Sometimes people ask why I don't just let it go, move on, take the high road. They don't understand that moving on doesn't mean letting people who hurt you escape accountability. The high road isn't silence and forgiveness for people who'd happily destroy you for their convenience. I visit my dentist every 6 months for regular checkups. The tooth they damaged has stayed stable, but there's a small scar on my lower lip that catches the light sometimes when I smile. I used to hate seeing it in the mirror, a permanent reminder of that day. Now I'm grateful for it. It reminds me of what I survived and what I'm capable of when pushed past my breaking point. It reminds me that I chose myself, finally, after decades of choosing everyone else. My new life in Arizona is quiet in the best way. I've made friends through work and a local hiking group. I adopted a dog named Scout from the shelter, and we explore desert trails on my days off. I'm dating someone casually, a radiologist named Marcus, who thinks family trauma is something you work through in therapy rather than a debt you owe forever. Last month, I received a letter forwarded from my old address. My cousin Jennifer, who I hadn't spoken to in years, wrote to say she was sorry for not standing up for me. She'd heard what happened through the family grapevine and wanted me to know she thought I'd done the right thing. She included her phone number and an invitation to reconnect if I was interested. I haven't decided yet whether to call her. Part of me wants to believe that some family connections are worth salvaging, but I've learned to be cautious about who I let into my life, to recognize red flags I once ignored, to value peace over obligation. What I know for certain is this: I will never again set myself on fire to keep someone else warm, family or otherwise. I will never again accept abuse disguised as love or manipulation dressed up as need. And if anyone ever tries to take what I've built through sacrifice and hard work, they'll discover exactly how far I'm willing to go to protect myself. My mother wanted me to fund Tiffany's dreams with my security. Instead, I funded my own freedom with their consequences. They'll never touch my life again because I built walls they can't scale and documented everything they've done so thoroughly that any future attempts would only hurt them worse. Some might call that revenge. I call it justice. And unlike forgiveness, justice doesn't require me to forget or minimize what was done to me. It doesn't ask me to be the bigger person or turn the other cheek. It simply says, "You hurt me, and here are the consequences." I sleep better now than I have in years. No more anxiety about unexpected visits or demands. No more walking on eggshells, wondering what they'll want from me next. Just blessed, peaceful silence, broken only by Scout's gentle snoring from his bed at the foot of mine. The house they wanted me to sacrifice bought me something far more valuable than startup capital for a brunch business that would have inevitably failed. It bought me distance, legal protection, and the satisfaction of knowing they paid dearly for underestimating me. Every time my mother makes a mortgage payment on a house they once owned free and clear, I hope she remembers the moment she drove that plate into my face. Every time Tiffany sees money pulled from her paycheck, I hope she remembers standing there, watching, doing nothing, expecting me to surrender everything I'd built. They taught me that family could be a weapon. I taught them that the weapon could be turned around. And I'd do it all again, without hesitation, without hesitation, without hesitation, without hesitation, without hesitation.